Hi pals, it's me, Artie. They're in pronouns only, and I didn't think I was going to make this video, but I decided I was going to anyway. Don't quite know what's going on with my camera angle today. You all know I have plenty of complaints when it comes to maths, and that isn't country specific. There are specifics about each country, but generally I have problems with maths now that have been accumulating and getting worse. Obviously the way that the show is edited makes everything look a certain way. The producers are fandangling drama in the background. The experts do things on this show that are not morally sound for therapists, which is why they aren't allowed to be called therapists, or it's not allowed to be called group therapy or couples counselling, and they're called commitment ceremonies. They seem to be matching people off the most ridiculous reasons and not asking any important questions that people should be asking, especially if you're matching people up to be together forever, supposedly. And the tasks are literally just to stir the pot, more than like they are to encourage growth or sharing or whatever. So of course I have my overall disclaimer that I'm going to say now, so I don't have to keep sort of repeatedly saying it throughout the video. This is just my opinion based off of what the show has shown me, pretty much, and occasionally little bits from reporting or social media from the people on the show, but mostly just the show itself. I've only seen their edit of the show, which is a small part of everything that these people go through, plus it is heavily influenced by the writers in the editing room, the producers as things are being filmed, and they have a hand in making things worse or making things look worse. And generally this show like clearly is a stressful experience for most people, as they are practically penned up in these tiny apartments with some random person, and they're not allowed to leave, and some of them aren't allowed their phones, and like doing all that for 10 weeks without being allowed to do basically anything else. It seems like I don't think anyone's allowed to do any hobbies. They definitely aren't supposed to be working. You know, any of my comments are not actually about these people directly. It is about the show and how the show has portrayed them and conducted the filming of the show. These people are real people, and I do not encourage or condone people harassing them on their socials or like anywhere else that you could possibly get a hold of them. And I do believe that the experts and others involved in the production are a large part of why this season in particular, but the show generally, is bad, and why almost everyone on the show looks so bad this year. Speaking of this year, it's been an absolute show. Genuinely, what the fuck is going on with this season? I've seen a couple of articles as well, actually, which is partly why I ended up making this. I didn't actually end up reading them yet. I was going to, and that just didn't happen, along with a few other things this week. So this is just based off of my own thoughts and opinions of this season, because like, it's bad. It's been really bad. This year there was only one queer couple, and they were like an absolute disaster. Like, it couldn't have gone worse, I feel. Eve became very manipulative and abusive, gaslighting and avoidant as a partner, who is so inflexible. Like, she wouldn't give Charlie the time of day. And Charlie, like, isn't perfect and did do some shitty things, but she was trying to share and trying to manage her own emotions and her own responses to Eve. But Eve didn't even do like a very simple task towards the end of their time in the experiment. And this is also one of the few tasks that I actually feel like is a good and useful task, which was just to write about something you'd never shared with the other person before, or like multiple things if you wanted to. And it didn't need to be deep. Like, that was the main thing me and my mum were discussing, is that it could have just been like almost anything, especially considering Eve and Charlie basically hadn't really gotten to know each other at all, because Eve wouldn't remain in the same room as Charlie for more than 5 minutes. You know, it could have been things as simple as like general get to know me questions, like favourite colour or more about your job or your family or something. Like, it didn't have to be like what Charlie did choose to share, and like instead she just left and didn't do the assignment at all. Let Charlie read her letter first to then go, yeah, I didn't bother. and then telling a different story to the other girls in the experiment. Also, like, initially I do understand why Eve was like bothered by Charlie. I would have found Charlie's behaviour annoying as well, but Charlie changed that. But Eve kind of continued just doing the same thing. But yeah, anyway, on to the fact that Eve was telling the other women in the experiment something different to what was going on. This leads to Polly, one of our resident ADHDers of this season, to confront Charlie. Now, I don't fault Polly for this action in particular. I feel like I'd have probably done something similar, but maybe in like a different way. But she did make it all come out and come to the surface and realised, you know, maybe Eve hadn't actually been telling her the entire truth, or even like a semblance of the truth of what had been going on between her and Charlie. And Polly saw what she had done was wrong and did go and apologise to Charlie, which I do respect. I think her lack of impulse control is what led to her going and doing that. But also the way that after that happened, that Eve was thanking Polly for doing it, but then talking to Charlie as if she really never wanted Polly to do it at all. I was very frustrated listening to Eve because it was all the things that she was doing to Charlie, actually. Some people this year had been given like some very obvious outward matches where like lots of people this year have been saying, yeah, they're my type, they're exactly what I asked for, blah blah blah, which I think helped some of the couples last for longer. But I mean, that was also the case for Eve and Charlie, and they exploded in a bad way very quickly. Emma pretty much got what she wanted outwardly, but then when she got to know him, he was a fucking dick. Yeah, like it kind of continues the same vibes with a lot of the couples. Like there's only a handful of couples, or a handful of like one side of the couple who feels like they weren't given what they wanted. Casper, Adam, Stephen, whoever else was on there. Look, mostly men. Rochelle was also one of them. They apparently set up Lacey's mum with the whole fajita thing, with the whole dinner fiasco, but I also just think that her mum was just plain not nice to Nathan at all during that whole scene. She was very mean to and about him for traits and things that her own daughter has and struggles with because of ADHD. Like, I feel like she was very bold to criticise Nathan's ADHD traits when one of her own daughters also has ADHD and struggles a lot. And also, like, Nathan's a vegetarian. It's not uncommon for vegetarians or vegans, etc., to not touch raw meat, not prepare food that has meat in it. Like, the accusation of him leaving Lacey's mum to do everything when they were supposed to be the hosts. You brought the dinner and you said you were going to cook, but also he did offer to cut other things up and prepare other things. He just didn't want to touch the meat because he's a vegetarian. Also, like, he then just went without dinner. Why didn't they cook the vegetables on their own and then did the chicken separately? He could have either just had the vegetables in a wrap. Surely they had some corn or tofu in their fridge. Like, they've been living there for 6-7 weeks or whatever already. Like, surely they have some kind of meat replacement or something in their freezer that they could have just cooked them up separately and then compiled them together. Because I mean, that's kind of what you do with fajitas. Like, I don't know what the issue was with all of this. And then, like, yeah, him trying to joke around because, like, clearly he'd, like, not had a great time with her one-on-one. He was trying to, like, I don't know. I think he was just trying. I wouldn't have any idea how to deal with this situation if I was him. So he was trying. He wasn't intentionally trying to be mean. He was just trying to make a joke. Also, bottom bin is so fucking funny. New phrase for the rest of my life, bottom bin. And then, like, when he stayed at their house for the, like, I don't know, home visit things, whatever. Like, the way that they all got into bed with them in the morning. Considering Lacey has such an intense, like, insecurity about guys preferring her twin sister over her, this whole sequence was very strange. Yeah, they all got into bed with them. They then all stood perving over him. The mum made him do, like, work on the house. For why, I don't know. And, like, he really did say it best. He said, like, I didn't know I'd be getting 3 wives in this experiment. And just generally, I just don't appreciate how Lacey's mum talks about him, to be honest. Nathan, however, generally, so slay. I love him. Lights are on, no one's home. Most of the time, dissociated to all hell. And only, like, pops back in to the room for like a brief moment when he hears some like tea, when he hears some drama going on, hears some gossip, or he's about to kill a man. Like that moment between him and Adam, when Adam was talking about his like usual type, and then Nathan just like suddenly is back in the room and just responds saying like, so you'd say you're rather superficial then? Slaughtered. Literally the funniest man on the show this season. When they did like the couple swap thing, he had quite a nice chat with Polly about ADHD, because they are both the ADHDers on this season. You know, I think that was set up on purpose so that they could have some airtime talking about ADHD. I think a lot of shows are purposefully putting in ADHDers and making them talk about it because it's like a buzzword for media at the moment. I'm also debating on making a video on like this thing alone. What? Because I've noticed this across multiple reality TV shows. So yeah, let me know if you want me to discuss the phenomena of reality TV shows having specifically ADHDers on. They always seem to be unmedicated as well. Like none of them are talking about being on meds. And I think that's an interesting choice. Polly and Adam frustrate me a lot. Adam was terrible at the start. I won't deny that. I don't know why they were matched, literally at all. Like at all. I have no words. I don't know. I feel like he has made some effort in the more recent like weeks where others just never even tried, but I'm just so disappointed, especially like in Polly, for crying about Adam going to a sex shop or lingerie shop or whatever with Amy to shop for bedroom things and lingerie for Polly. But Polly's upset he went off to do that with somebody else. But also she doesn't even know about like some of the things that were going on between him and Amy. Like there wasn't anything further than like jokey, flirtatious banter. I don't think some of it was appropriate, generally. Some of it was just funny, silly, but some of it was a little bit much. But she doesn't even know that, and she's just upset about him going shopping with one of the other like girls on the show for her. I don't really get it. I don't understand. He said that the reason why, like, Amy forced him to go, for one. Also, he said that he felt more comfortable going with Amy because they were friends, they were friendly. Whereas, like, he felt like there would be more pressure if he went with Polly, whereas he's going with Amy to try and find ways of making intimacy at whatever level it is that they are dealing with. I don't care anymore. I don't care anyway. Whatever level of intimacy, like more fun and like silly and like playful to kind of like get past some of this pressure. And she's just like sobbing, crying, and then she realizes at the dinner party when someone points it out that actually, yeah, she is kind of quite pushy about this thing, not realizing or accepting or acknowledging the other things he does do that aren't, you know, necessarily like touchy or sexual kinds of intimacy. They're more like acts of service kinds of intimacy, and how she's been talking about it as not enough, and that when he did finally do something that he thought she wanted, which was intimacy related, it's still not right, it's still not good enough. I mean, like, I would be pissed if I was him too. It's so confusing. A lot of this season has actually shown a lot more of like both sides of couples or arguments being wrong, just doing wrong things and being shitty, which in some ways I like, because it's made it a bit more nuanced. It's not so obvious of like, oh, this one's the arsehole and this one's the perfect one who's done everything right. It's more like, no, they've both done shitty things and they've both done things that make no sense, that have hurt the other person. But it does make for like quite a difficult show to watch and digest, because just kind of everyone's an asshole. Like, that's how the show makes it come across. It's just everyone's unlikable and everyone's an asshole. There's like maybe two or three people I don't feel that way about, and I think that is Ross, Christina, Nathan. But like most everybody else is kind of just a massive asshole. And like everybody is continually arguing about things because someone else is doing something shitty, which like is more realistic to like just life, but it then also means a lot of that stuff isn't really confronted or discussed a lot of the time as well, because they don't care. They don't have time for that. You're off the couch now, fuck off. Back to my thing about Polly and Adam. If she knew about some of the comments that he was making to Amy, then I would understand this reaction. I'd be like, yeah, fair enough. Like, he's actively flirting, whether he means it as a joke or not doesn't necessarily matter in that instance. But because she doesn't even know that, she's just upset that he has gone shopping. And also, she only knows or knew about that in advance as well, because he texted her asking for her bra size so he could buy something that fits. I don't know. After this huge blow up, Adam's back to just being completely off and being worse, like worse than the beginning. And he like just starts picking fights with her constantly whilst they're on like their home visits, and is upset with like anything she does or says. So then she's actually trying to cover up what's really going on when she's with her family and stuff. And that's really sad. Like, I don't think she should pretend. I can't remember if she did talk to them about it, just when he wasn't there. Just my overall answer to everybody is just leave. Just leave the show, please. The experts as well are just like allowing contestants to prime their partners for overly controlling relationships, I feel like, especially this season. You know, why didn't we talk about the way that both Sasha and Luke talked about that group photo, and how Sasha like had a complete breakdown over thinking that Ross was too close to, I think it was Lacey, had his arm around her, even though he definitely didn't. He was leaning in for a photo, but apparently she doesn't like him being that close to another woman, even though like Lacey's supposed to be a friend. Like, you know, one thing just having boundaries in a relationship, but it's another controlling certain aspects with no like logical reasoning behind that. Like, there is no reason for that except from your own personal insecurity and need for control. Like, those are the only two reasons for behaviors like that. But also, like, Luke agreed that if his partner Amy was doing the same thing, he would also be absolutely devastated. Shut up, Luke. Not bringing up how Luke insinuated Lacey wasn't classy for what she did in the salsa dancing with Adam, and he was praising Amy for not being like her, for not, you know, for behaving properly or something, which is a very controlling move. As a side note, I personally think that Lacey's actions in that particular moment are very grey area. Like, I think that in particular is highly dependent on like the people involved. I think, for me personally, it would depend on who it all was. Like, if my partner was either of those people, it would very much depend on who the other person was and what the whole like relationship dynamics were between all of us, as to whether I would just go, that's funny, lol, or just be a bit like, I'm not comfortable with that. But when it comes to the actual like issue at hand, luckily Polly just thought it was funny, and she, you know, trusted that Lacey wasn't interested in Adam and Adam wasn't gonna try it on with her. So like, generally my feelings on that actual thing in particular is that as long as the people actually involved don't care, then it's not your fucking problem. Like, I don't care if they don't care. Luke genuinely seemed to be playing to the cameras more through the season almost. And like, this is not something I say often because I don't want to just assume somebody is not being themselves when they go on to reality TV shows. Like, obviously, generally, people are multifaceted. We all act and behave a bit differently with different people in different situations. Like, that's not unusual. I do think it's probably likely that you won't be behaving exactly like your normal self if you're on a reality TV show, full stop, but also depending on what one you're on. But like, is he really like this at home? Is he really like this at home? Really? I also don't care that he did topless waitering. You know, I was very here for like a couple of seasons ago. PJ, who was a stripper, slay, go him, Magic Mike as fuck, whatever. But like, I do care that he didn't really tell the truth to Amy about that, and that he was a lot more naked at times than he previously admitted to. And also, he does seem to play both sides to arguments. He, you know, was consoling Sasha on the partner being too close to a woman in the photo thing, saying he felt the same. And, you know, I do think that is controlling from both of those people. And then like telling Amy she's classy for not acting like that, but then telling Lacey that he's actually envious that Amy isn't like that with him, and he's trying to say like, oh, the vibe, the vibrancy, the music. Well, like, take her to a fucking salsa class then. Are you bored? It just sounds like you're bored. Just go to a salsa dance if you want to go be around music and have some fun. Go do something. I don't know if he's done it for her this season, because she swapped and had Adam, and he said that he wasn't doing any more than what he does for Polly. Amy was like, oh yeah, Luke never makes me coffee in the morning. He never makes me breakfast. He never runs a bath. He never does any of these things. All he does is this weird sexual shit all the time. Amy has been like quite verbally honest about that discomfort, but also like just her body language is obviously like uncomfortable when he does those things. All he seems to do is ruin moments that could have been really nice by being overtly sexual again. He either makes really sexual comments, jokes, innuendos, or he's just literally taking his clothes off, which is not everyone's preference. He doesn't do a lot of the bare minimum, like I was saying just now. He did treat Lacey better in the swap than he treats Amy, which caused a lot of drama after that when she found that out. And then like the one time he finally does make her coffee in the morning, she pointed out that, you know, it's when the cameras came out and he was completely naked except from a tiny apron covering his junk at the front. Like, my guy, can you not just make a coffee with your clothes on? Can you not just not be weird for a sec, you know? You know, whereas like another couple that's been in a similar situation is Ross and Sasha, where Ross has like been very respectful and very patient of Sasha's like personal boundaries around sex and intimacy generally, that, you know, before the show she had abstained from sexual contact or encounters. I don't think she was really necessarily dating either, and she wants to get to know people before she wants to sleep with them. When he found that out, and Ross is also quite like a dirty-minded sexual joke enjoyer and teller, but as soon as she said those things, he was like, oh yeah, fair enough, that's cool, no problem. Whereas like when it's Luke and Amy, like, yeah, maybe they've been having sex, but also it seems like everything has to be kind of sexual to Luke, and Amy just hasn't vibed with that like at all. Like, when do you take a moment to clock, oh yeah, actually I realise you're uncomfortable and you've literally been telling me you're uncomfortable for weeks, I will stop now. Like, please, when? And also I have been giving him a lot of benefit of the doubt because English is not his first language. He is a bit clunky with his words, but it just seems to be getting worse. The gossip from like the week that's just happened, where Sasha called Luke out on playing both sides of arguments, being two-faced when it's convenient and changing his stories depending on who he's talking to. It's frustrating because sometimes until very recently and like certain things she's been doing recently, I was very pro Sasha. I thought she was really great and really funny until yeah, the controlling aspects really started coming out, and nobody's challenged her on that. And actually when they did those anonymous letters that they all had to read out, Ross was getting all the criticism for jumping into fights when he's only jumped into one fight, and that was because of Sasha. Sasha's been jumping into fights more recently. I wouldn't say that's generally what she's like, but more recently she has been, mainly with Alex, but also sometimes other people like Luke as well. There was a really gross comment that I didn't like, where they were talking about Sasha has done so much to give to Ross and to adapt to him, and I feel like that was a direct comment on Ross being deaf, because besides the bare minimum of like making sure that he can lip read her while they talk, and that she was already learning sign language a bit anyway before, but he's also been teaching her through the process too, so she's been learning sign language to be able to communicate with him better too. Besides that, as the bare minimum, I don't feel like she's done much for him. I feel like he's been the one to do a lot for her. She has very traditional values, which aren't necessarily bad, but that, like I said, they are verging on overly controlling now. So yeah, she's got very traditional values and has a lot of expectations of being looked after and being the princess and, you know, not being close with other women in any way or whatever, and always backing her in fights or whatever. And like, besides the one fight where like he admitted that he was, you know, in the wrong and was really shitty the way he acted. And again, I respect people who go, yeah, actually, I feel bad for what I did and I am really sorry for that. I shouldn't have done that and I will be conscious not to do that again going forward. You know, like Polly with Charlie. Ross did that same thing with Sasha, where he just admitted, yeah, like, you were right, that was unfair, was not nice of me to do. I admit that. Besides that, everything has always been like, what Sasha needs, without any like further internal, like, I don't know, reflection or criticism from her, him, experts, their friends. Why has nobody else noticed the somewhat controlling narrative going on here? Like, it's, I don't know, I just don't like it. And I really didn't like that comment about like, oh, you've given him so much, you've done so many things to make him feel good and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, being a basic, normal, nice person to a disabled person, like, what? Sorry, that is not good enough, actually, in my opinion. But then as well, this last week, with the family visits as well, Sasha sees Ross with his little girl and decided that she can't move from Birmingham to Manchester because she's that little girl in her mind. Except is she 30? She either is 30 or is nearly 30. And like, she just can't be away from her family. But she's been on this experiment for like nearly 10 weeks by herself, completely fine. I don't know if they had their own phones this year for once, but she's not had a lot of contact with them, and she's not been, again, it's not being shown to us, but you'd think that some acknowledgement of missing her family would come up, but it hasn't. And the way she was talking about it is like, you know, phones or video calls don't exist, or like she can't just travel there as an option. I looked it up and it's only like an hour and a half to 2 hours to travel there, either by car or by train, and that's basically me going to London. So like, I don't get what the problem is. I lived that far away from my family for 3 years for uni. Like, what? I don't get it. Like, it's not that far. And like, I just can't believe that she really might be about to expect Ross to move away from his child. Like, we don't know what his setup is at home. We don't know if he has full custody or even shared custody. We don't know what that setup is at all. If he has full custody, then maybe, sure, he could possibly move with his daughter Blue nearer to Birmingham for Sasha, as she is, you know, as his daughter is under like school age. At least it won't be disrupting her life of like being at school and having made friends. But like, any other situation besides this, I like cannot see and would not expect Ross to move away from his daughter, like especially as she's so young. Maybe if she was a teenager, he could have moved even all the way to Birmingham, because she could at least travel to him on the train or something by herself. I'm just tired. I'm tired of this. Like, this is ridiculous, honestly. I don't think he should move away from his very young child because you are codependent. I'm very pro families actually being a family unit and like actually supporting each other, not in the nuclear family weirdness way, in more like a community way. But like, this is going into just like codependency and unhealthy relationships vibes, in my opinion. That's my opinion! Based off of the show. I don't even want to talk about Rochelle and how she treated or spoke about Orson. I feel like we didn't even get to know Orson because all she did was talk shit about him constantly based on what she perceived of him. Again, it's the way that these people grab like one sentence and like twist it to mean something else and won't have a conversation about that. They won't ask for clarity. They just perceive it and go, that's it then, you can go f yourself, you're not for me. At times she was really, really vile. The way she spoke about him. You know, like, I'm sure there are things that we didn't see. Maybe there was some like fair reasoning for that, but like the way it was on the show was bad, was not good. Also, Hannah and Stephen were like just literally a ridiculous nightmare. I think initially Stephen just put me off anyway. He had weird vibes. But like, Hannah then became like very unreasonable. Any conversation they had where Stephen tried to like express that her actions or comments may have like upset him or hurt him, she took it as a personal attack rather than a conversation or feedback. But then Stephen did proceed to just be a complete wanker and like try it on with somebody else's wife. So good one. The wife of which was Shannon, who was paired with Ryan. Like, she was very judgy of him at the start based off of his looks, which I think was weird and unfair. But they were fine after that, when they got to like talking and stuff. Everything was fine until suddenly they would have like the occasional just very random unexplained argument or spat that just didn't seem to actually come from anywhere. And then they just suddenly were like, we're leaving. And Ryan was, I don't even remember what Ryan was saying. Shannon was basically saying that he was actually abusive. If he was, good on you, Shannon, for leaving. Because, like, I think more of the people who have been in this season should have left because they were being abused. But anyway, you know, obviously I'm not going to fully comment on that because I didn't see anything on the telly. Except, you know, if he was abusive, he was maybe the only smart person on the show in its history who is abusive and has actually hidden the abuse from the cameras. Because most of the others just do it on camera and then they're like shocked Pikachu face when people tell them they're being abusive. Casper was terrifying for like the longest time. He really seemed to hate Emma for like no reason. I understand, like, I mean, he seems to have a really strange relationship with his twin sister, who he seems to really, really hate as well. I don't know, he says that she's the only person that can really wind him up. He seemed to say it in like such a concerning, like aggressive, somewhat violent vibe. I partly understand the resistance he had to Emma, especially if she reminds him of his sister. I don't have siblings, so I can't really comment on that at all, but like, imagine you meet someone or have been matched up with someone or set up on a blind date with somebody, and when you meet them they remind you of your sibling. Even if you got on, would that not be weird? Would that not be weird, you know? So I can understand some of the reservations because of that. However, the fat phobia, the fuck? Especially considering he's like not exactly skinny or like muscular muscle man prince, you know, is like hilarious. Also at Adam for the same thing. It's always just like average looking blokes who expect to have like the most perfect, gorgeous, ridiculous supermodel girls paired with them and won't accept anything less. And it's like, my guy, you do not even meet the lowest bar. You don't. You just don't. Why do you think you deserve that when you know, why do you think you deserve this when you're literally like so low that I can't even show you on screen? I do feel like he started to try and was trying and did realise he was a horrible asshole to her, but then they both sort of were just like, fuck this, you know? They should have just gone home sooner. They should have just left, especially his comment about practicing for future relationships. Excuse me? Excuse me? Actually wild. Saying that. Actually wild. I also think that his repeated talking about preference of women being like someone who relies on him, someone who needs him, and he's the man and he does everything. It's just kind of like, my guy, you do not meet that standard for anyone. And like, just generally, I feel like MAFS is just a training ground for like every useless person to be paired with like a capable, charming, well-liked person, like someone well above what they actually deserve. And I say people because most people commenting on MAFS, they always say men in this comment, but like, I think there are some awful men, sure. There have been some awful men in MAFS shows. But there's also been quite a lot of awful women. Whether they're paired with another woman or whether they're paired with a man, there have been some awful women on this show. And I would have to say there's a few in this season alone. And I do think there have been some really lovely men, whether they are also, you know, paired with a man or paired with women. Like, there have been some really genuinely kind and well-adjusted men on the show. I just think that they always pair a well-adjusted person with somebody who is just like off the fucking rails and just go, good luck, bitch. Like, I feel like Shannon and Ryan were literally paired because Shannon's dad died of cancer and Ryan's had cancer twice. Like, what relevance does that have? I mean, sure, yeah, like they bonded over some of those experiences. But what fucking relevance does that have? Or whether they're actually going to be a good fit, you know? But also they do absolutely just pair a couple of like completely off the rails people together and just go, long, good luck, bitch. It's just a practical joke, honestly. Especially this season, I've noticed, but it happens in every season, I think. But I really, really hate how the experts have like such a resistance and demonization to people's valid anger. Like it's all about policing people's behaviour around anger, except from like maybe a certain few. Like the way they policed the women when they all blew up at Alex because they'd been subjected to weeks of his bullshit, and watching Holly also having that experience, but probably worse because they were paired together, because like they never know how to talk to him, or like, you know, the constant explosive arguments between him and Holly, like that was just exhausting to watch, let alone imagine like living through that. And then the way he treated you and spoke to, yes, the women in the room. I mean, the only person, like, no, there were a few people who challenged his comment initially at the Bachelor party, like where he was basically already saying that he was ready to swap wives if he found his wife unattractive. Like, wild. I think Charlie was the first to call it out, so of course the only woman in the room, but then like a few of them also piped up being like, yeah, the fuck. Like, I think as well they felt threatened too, because if he's willing to just ditch his wife and go after another wife, what if it's their wife they go for, like he goes for? But anyway, yeah, the way he was treating the other women, particularly the ones who were calling him out on his crap, and like he even goes for them when they're literally just answering those task questions. Like, I feel like a lot of the times the participants take these questions too seriously, like, or like the answer to them too seriously, because it's like, for one, would anyone actually ever like genuinely say or think these things to their partner or to their friends? I don't think so. So like, yeah, generally everybody had enough of him, including Holly, everything that he was just constantly like dishing out, and his weird, gross schoolboy like bullying behaviours. Like when people were so pissed off, he would just sit there like knowing that would piss people off more. Even the experts commented on that, but then they let him keep doing it and didn't like call him up on that at all. The women were policed on how they approached the conversation, but also Ross as well, because he was pissed at some of the things that Alex had said to / about Sasha, when it's also just like, you know, once again, you the experts have clearly not seen anything else that's been going on between these people. You only see the dinner party, which he did plenty of shitty things at these dinner parties. Surely you can remember that. Or the only other things you see is the commitment ceremonies, or if you do any one-on-one support with them. Like, these people who were going for him were clearly at their wits' end after witnessing him going for other people, being on the receiving end of it regularly for like very mild comments, at least initially. Some of them eventually got quite harsh and like some of them were a bit unfair, but he just kind of continued pushing it and continued getting away with it. It was always the same feedback on the couch. It was always the same shit of like, you're not really participating in this conversation. He's also so misogynistic. Your woman this, your woman that, learn to be quiet this. We are in 2024, babe. No woman is a man's woman. Like it's just wild that he thinks he can speak to people like that. And he's like, he is a child of like a single mum who he supposedly looks up to, but he treats women like this. And like, I don't even really like Holly. I don't really like her, but like, I really think Alex is quite pretty awful. Holly pointed out on the final like couch session that she does try to point out to him when he's being horrible, being unfair, his comments are just not necessary, etc. But he blows up at her because he was sat there on the couch, changed his entire demeanour to like,
you know, like, I just want this thing and I just came here for love, you know, and I just want someone who wants to communicate with me and wants to work with me and call me up on if I've said something that's hurt their feelings. Because if you don't say something, how will I know?
It's like, bitch, people have been. Holly has been for weeks. but you just explode. You cannot take it. You can't take it. And that's why we're here, my guy. What? The experts don't ever, like, actually get involved with that. They're too busy telling the women that they're being mean. Being mean to a man that's been so fucking horrible to all of them. I just need to talk about this top for a second, right? I could not stop staring at this top. the whole, like, where does she wear this? On the couch, I think. Why is she wearing cabbage leaves? Why is she wearing a top that looks like a cabbage? Like, especially because of her boobs. The size of her boobs, like, basically is the size of, like, you know, 2 cabbages or 2 fucking lettuces, and I can't unsee it, and I just need somebody else to know, you know. Also, my final point that I will be making here is that I am so desperately upset about Kieran and Christina. I feel like Kieran has given up and just, like, stopped communicating with anybody about his feelings or thoughts about Christina and their relationship. He spent weeks being distant from her, not talking about it, and everyone's been trying to get him to talk about whatever it is, but all we get is, oh, Christina is the same as my ex, but she's also actually completely unique and nobody in the world is like her. Pick one, Kieran. Pick one, Kieran. You can't have both. Those are like 2 opposite ends of one fucking statement. And I full stop do not get what his problem is. Like, I just don't get it. Like, he had sexual interest in her at the beginning. Why do you not have it now? Because you suddenly think she's exactly like your ex, so is going to abuse you in the same way as what you've described on TV to everybody, where she's going to lock you out of your fucking caravan and you have to sleep in the car because she can't stand having you around. Like, the fuck? You really think that somebody's going to go and behave like that again? He did put a lot of this on Christina having PMDD. Like, oh, I've been trying to work out whether I could cope with having a partner who needs this much support because of PMDD. And it's like, that's nothing to do with it actually at this point, mate. I think you're just making shit up. And he's another one who's taking one-off comments that are, like, pretty vague, that you can interpret in a million different ways, and just deciding on his interpretation being the one that's correct, not having a conversation with her about it, or anybody else for that matter, except from Sasha, who didn't stand up for Christina, like, at all. Like, when he was like, oh yeah, I've done my pros and cons list, she's exactly like my ex, and Sasha was like, oh really? Oh no, I can't do a Brummy accent, so she's Australian apparently, but, like, you know, you could have done a bit more to stand up for Christina there, Sasha, fucking hell. But yeah, these one-off comments that are being completely misconstrued and changed from what maybe actually is the reality. Because when they did get into an argument in their, like, double date with Sasha and Ross, for every single one of his, like, weird comments, she had a rebuttal. She had an explanation that wasn't what he thought it was, but he wasn't taking any of it in. He was not accepting any of that. And, like, I don't get it. Also, like, they are a couple that clearly needed support from the experts. Where the fuck have they been? They seem to have and pick their favourites that they want to keep around and make shit worse, but they'll go and support those ones, but they won't support the people who seem to genuinely need some help and will ignore some really, like, dangerous red flags that are coming up with some of these couples and not address any of them, like the control problems. And yeah, anyway, side note, because I can never remember everybody's names on these shows, I had to Google an article that had all of the names and all the people. The Radio Times can't get right who has left because they have said Polly left. It was actually Holly that left with, like, she was with Alex, but they got the guys right. Just another example of the continuation of gold star journalism. Like, I know it's not that big of a deal, but it's just one of the many, like, times where you're like, it's not a hard thing to check. It's not a hard fact to check. And you can't even be asked, you know? So yeah, anyway, that's my video about the frustrations of this season of, like, I think most of these people should not have been paired with each other. I think quite a few of these people should not have been put on the show, full stop. They should not have been on this show. I don't know, there should have been something that came up in their, like, initial checks or, like, interviews that made them go, oh, maybe not this one. actually, maybe not this one. And like I said, they're just like the continued like ignoring of really, really harmful behaviours, both within couples and within just general groups. And I don't know how this season is so bad. Like, it really feels like they are just not even trying anymore. They are not even trying anymore. I feel like Paul is the main one who says shit that is incorrect. And even last year he admitted that they didn't know enough of what was going on, and that was the problem. I feel like that has still not fucking changed, or it has changed. They're just deciding to continue to behave this way. Like, usually Paul's the one that says all the shit. Mel will sometimes say something, but mostly she's just mute, silence, not participating. She's just there to be part of the brand of Married at First Sight. And then Charlene will sometimes be there talking about intimacy and sex stuff. But also, I do feel like sometimes she doesn't respect people's own comfort levels, boundaries, and consent, ironically, about talking about intimacy, whether it's sex or whatever, on the show. Like, sorry, some people just don't fucking want to talk about it. And they do kind of force people to at times. It's very interesting who they do and don't force to do what. So yeah, like, even though I did quite like Charlene generally, I do feel a bit disappointed that she's always kind of in support of what those people are saying, like the other two experts. And then she's never really there when couples need help with intimacy a lot of the time. Like, they only ever seem to help the people who are just like very clearly not worth bothering with, to be honest, because they're going to go home. Like, they don't want to be there. So yeah, usual frustrations really. This year was just so much worse. I hope that these aren't accurate depictions of these people. My concern is that these are kinds of things that are being shown to the rest of the country / world and are still kind of just continuing to be normalised by like the experts and some of the other couples at times, and like some of the really, really concerning behaviours of not being addressed. Like, we are basically at the end now. I think by the time my video comes out, like, the last week has happened, and maybe the last episode of the week will be after my video, and then I think there probably is usually a reunion the next week. Like, we're near the end, and like everybody has fallen apart pretty much. I don't think anybody is stable together. I think the most stable, Lacey and Nathan, but even then I'm not sure because of how Nathan gets treated by Lacey's family. So yeah, like, it just concerns me, the normalisation of such weird, controlling, abusive at times behaviours are on telly, when actually the last few years a lot of people have been calling out and addressing these kinds of behaviours. Like, particularly in the Australian one. Jesus. Harrison and Jack were the ones that everybody hated in the last few years. Where's that energy for the UK? Like, when's somebody actually going to like get some of these people on the couch and really grill them about some of their behaviours? Like, nah, can't be asked. And like, I will fight John in the Australian MAFS. I would fight him. I would fight him for a fiver, you know, like, any reason, I'd do it. But like, at least last season he was actually calling people on their shit. I respect that, John. Nobody's doing that in this season for the UK. Maybe John and Mel should swap one year. Even though I can't stand him. Can't stand that man. I want to see how that looked. But yeah, anyway, I wasn't going to do a video on MAFS because like, they don't, I don't know. The UK ones do a bit better than me talking about the Australian ones. But also, sometimes there's just so much to say, and they can get a little bit too, obviously, like, personal. Like, I've said a lot of things that are probably quite hurtful in this video, but I am trying to keep the focus on, like, this is how they, like, these people have been presented on this show. Whether they are actually like the way they've been shown on the TV is a very different story. My concern is just that these things are just not being like acknowledged or addressed or challenged on the show. Like, we know most of it is practically fiction at this point because the way things are edited and the ways producers manipulate things and the ways that the question box things and chat like tasks are formulated. This season has been ridiculous. I almost didn't really know where to start. I initially really wanted to make a video purely on Eve and Charlie because we don't really often see more real depictions of abusive behaviours in queer relationships, because there's a bit of a toxic positivity around like, oh no, gays can't be abusive to each other because we're gay. Gays are the best and better than the straights, which is also a mindset a lot of autistic or generally neurodivergent people have about neurotypicals, which neither of which I agree with. I think some of you suck just as much or more than a lot of the neurotypicals or straight people I've met. Oh. And that's just me being honest. Like, these things aren't because they're straight or because they're gay or because they're neurotypical or because they're neurodivergent. It's because they're people. People can just suck. Well, that's kind of it. I can't remember if I had any particular like thought to end this, but yeah, like everything has been so ridiculous with this season. I just kind of felt like I had to at least talk about it a bit before it finished, because like, oh, I'm very disappointed generally with reality TV this year. It's been pretty bad, and I have a feeling that I'm a Celebrity is going to be just as bad too. Unfortunately, a lot of my comfort TV programmes just make me angry. So angry. That's my video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, watch my other videos, share my videos. I do have a playlist for Married at First Sight videos. If you want to go and watch those, please do. It helps with the watch time, which we're trying to boost because that's the last hurdle left apparently in becoming a YouTube partner or whatever. I don't know, something like that. So let me know in the comments if there's anything that you would like to see me discuss in terms of media. And yeah, that's it from me today. I will see you next week. Bye.